All right. It says it's recording.
It says it is. We should be good.
All right. I hope so. All right. So we've got a very, very, very special guest today. Got my great friend, Charlie Morgan. Charlie has gone from a college dropout to the founder of multiple seven-figure companies. The reason I mention this is because you guys really need to listen to what he's saying. People refer to him as the modern day Carl Jung, modern day Freud, agency philosopher. Apparently they do, man. Apparently they do. Sources tell me. And yeah, man, thank you for coming on, firstly.
Dude, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful. I also want to say before we start that if you haven't subscribed to Ethan yet, you need to go and do it now. We'll get that out of the way. But yeah, nice to be here, mate.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't pay Charlie to say that. No. And on that note, I'm also going to link all of Charlie's stuff below. So I want to get straight into it. I've learned a ton from Charlie, both in practical business, systems, but also in mindset and just life in general. Mm-hmm. So the first question that I wanted to ask was, firstly, when I think of simplicity, I think of two people. The first one is Sam Ovens, and the second is you. And we really admire that about you. So I wanted to ask, where do people overcomplicate business between the stages of around 10K a month to around 100K a month?
It's a good question. Before I answer it, can I tell people who I am? Because a lot of them won't know.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
That cool? Well, so my name's Charlie, as Ethan introduced me. I mean, Ethan introduced me really well. I've built a couple of multi-seven-figure businesses. The company I run is called Imperium Acquisition, and we help people systemize client acquisition. But to answer that question, so where do people overcomplicate business the most between 10 and 100 grand a month? All right, so the complication is born in the conception of the business itself. And what I mean by that is it's not what you start doing at 10 grand a month or 50 grand a month that complicates it. It's the initial conditions of the business itself. So when we started Imperium Acquisition, Bo and I, we had the foresight to engineer the business to be as simple as possible with the least amount of complexity. So there's no moving parts and it's very lean. So it's not about what you do at 10 or 50. It's more about what you do at 0 and how you envision the thing being built. Now, complexity is exponential. And what that means is it works on like an exponent. So adding one thing to your business might only increase the complexity by 10%. But if you add a second thing, then you might increase it by 150%, right? So it's not like 1 + 1 = 2. When it comes to business, if you add two things, you can increase the complexity significantly. But ultimately, the biggest mistakes people make in terms of complexity, whether it is at 0 or at 10 or 50 or 100, is product and niche. So if you have more than one product, you make your business infinitely more complex. And if you have more than one niche, you make your business infinitely more complex. So Bo's my business partner. We have a rule of thumb. And it's more of a principle that we use in business, which is just one of everything. Yeah. And what that means is like, we have one product, we have one offer, we have one payment plan, we have one sales script, we have one contract, we have one website, we have one funnel, we have one YouTube traffic, basically one source of traffic. We have like one appointment setter with multiple accounts. And like when you just have one of everything, you've only got to manage one thing of everything. Whereas if you had two products, then you suddenly have two contracts, two sales scripts, two pricing plans. And the complexity is infinite if you're not careful. So I'd say that's like, as opposed to what people complicate specifically, it's that. But I would argue that like the thing that is easiest to overcomplicate is the actual process of delivering results and the product. Because people just add features and random stuff to their products when really you can keep it super lean. So I guess that's where I see things being complicated. And I appreciate the comparison to Sam Ovens. I don't think there's much of a higher compliment than that, to be honest.
Yeah. He is the GOAT.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% agree. 100% agree. And then in terms of streamlining your actual delivery, how have you worked to do that? And more specifically, when you were running your initial agency, and I probably should have introduced you with that, but either way, first time podcasting.
Yeah.
How did you do it with the Done For You one specifically?
Yeah. So the Done For You business that we used to run is called NorthFlow Consulting. Yeah. And at its peak, we had anywhere between 60 to 70 Done For You clients, paying anywhere between like 1 to 3 grand a month. So it was a sort of 7-figure business. Now, the thing with the Done For You business at that level is I can tell people watching this that it's not fun. you have 70 headaches basically. And it's quite hard to manage that. Now, so in terms of keeping the service delivery as efficient as possible with a high volume of clients, once again, it comes down to keeping things super simple, but it's also like inside of your offer, what are your deliverables, and keeping that as minimal as possible. And it's also about having a niche, right? So because we were working with gyms, we could essentially like, if we would know, like, we would know what offers would work, and we'd have 1 or 2 offers depending on the gym that we'd use. And then we also would have the ad copy that worked, the subject lines, the titles that worked. And really, like, service delivery became more of a case of copying and pasting stuff and having to think. Because, dude, if you have to think every time you sign a new client, like, you're asking for trouble. So engineering proven things and then relying on fractal patterns, so like businesses that look like those businesses you can just copy and paste across. That's exactly how we did it, to be honest.
So if you help the same person, you have one niche, you can get to a point where it's so simple, where you're just copying and pasting delivery between each client, because you're pretty much doing the exact same thing.
It's also about like the big bottleneck becomes support. Because, like, you know, if you're not careful, like you've got like 70 people like screaming at you every day. And so it becomes about setting clear boundaries and clear methods of people getting support. So like one mistake people make when they start getting clients is giving their clients their phone number. Like, oh yeah, just like message me on WhatsApp or something, or like, you know, here's my personal email. Like, you need to have like a streamlined way of supporting clients, because if it's decentralized, then it's just chaos. So
no, 100%, I agree. And even with, you know, 5, 10, 15 clients, you already start feeling like a customer support rep.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into the trap of just like too much support.
Yeah, 100%. So would Slack be an okay thing, giving them your Slack?
Well, so we used to use WhatsApp Business, and that's how we would handle it. That's what we found to be the easiest way. We tried Slack, but the thing about Slack with our old niche is that the niche just doesn't use it.
Oh yeah.
So like with gyms, like if we tried to onboard them into Slack, they just wouldn't use it, and then they wouldn't ask for support, which would mean we wouldn't be able to solve problems, which means retention would drop. But most gym owners that we worked with would actually use WhatsApp. So we found that like by choosing a support platform that was most conducive to the niche actually asking for support, we were able to provide better support. Because it's like people like, the thing about support is people want to reduce the amount of tickets they get, but you actually don't want to do that. Because less support is less opportunity to actually add value. So yeah, that's the thing people get wrong.
That's smart.
You want to reduce support. You want to increase it, if anything.
I need to write that down.
Yeah.
But besides that, I know so many people in the agency space, they're talking about sign more clients, more marketing, all these, but most people never take much time to focus on the back end. And what I wanted to ask was, are there any specific or key numbers that you track in terms of fulfillment?
What, for done for you or for coaching?
Either one.
Yeah, so I know how Amazon does it, right? So Amazon basically tracks, and I can loop this back into how we do it in a second. But Amazon's primary metric for tracking the effectiveness of their customer support or their overall systems is how many support tickets are opened per unit of goods sold. So like they look at it like that, because ultimately, like, if someone's happy, they're not going to ask for support. And if they're asking for support, they're already pissed off, right?
Yeah.
So that's how Amazon does it. We kind of do a similar thing, but the truth is that, like, for the current business we have for Imperium Acquisition, we don't have a metric really for logging it. That's because we've got quite a lot of clients and it becomes impossible to track. But the main one that we would look at is the refund rate or the dispute rate, right? Fortunately enough, our refund and dispute rates are like less than like 0.1% at this point. Yeah. So it's not like, you only really need to track things that can create problems. So we don't spend too much time tracking that, because it's not where our attention needs to be, because it doesn't, sure, there might be ways to improve it, but ultimately, like, we never run into problems. It's not a bottleneck. When we were doing the done for you thing, we would really just track it by how many months someone would stick with us for. And that was the primary metric that we used, but we never got too fancy with it, really. Like, it's more about, like, if someone does leave, you find out why. And then like what we would do is we'd have like spreadsheets And we would always know like the main few reasons as to why someone would leave, like not enough leads, or leads aren't good enough, or the quality's not good enough, or someone offered it to me cheaper. And then you can just tally up why people have left. And over doing that for like 3 months, you can start to get a good understanding of like why your clients are leaving. And that's the only way to improve service delivery, is to understand like why people are like not finding it valuable anymore, because then you can fix that. But that's sort of how we did it.
100%. King of spreadsheets.
Mate, I love my spreadsheets. Bro. By the way, do you want me to put a proper light on my camera? Because I think it's sort of like dark.
Sure, man.
I'll just back it on real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're assuming you can edit this bit out?
We leave it in, man. Organic.
Yeah, just leave it in. Why not? If you're watching this, just skip by a minute or two.
Yeah.
It'd probably be better if I just... I should have done it before, to be fair, but...
Hey, man.
These are good questions, mate. These are good questions. Alright, let's try that.
Hey.
That's more like it.
Better?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't even tell the difference, to be honest. But
oh shit, it was annoying me. Go on, carry on.
All right. Either way, what was I even talking about? Anyway, in terms of simplification, a big one, obviously, simplifying the business. That's very necessary. I wanted to ask you, how do you simplify your personal life? How do you optimize that?
Ooh. Well, that's a really good question. So I think it's going to come down to the individual. You have to find out what your vices are at the beginning. I think that like the best, if you're a guy, the best place to start is with your relationship, or your relationship with women, because that will get you. Like if you have you can't have a complicated work life and also a complicated personal life at the same time. And most of your personal life complication will come from things like relationships and stuff like that. I think that like also being able to routinize and systemize like what you eat is important. I use a meals delivery service in the UK called Lions Prep, because then I don't have to think about what I'm eating, which can be a massive sort of time sink. But at the same time, like you kind of just have to look at like, where's your time going if you're not working? What do you hate doing? And then just get rid of those things. It's not massively complicated, but it's really just going to come down to like what you're eating, who you're hanging around, who you're sleeping with, and whether or not they're a complete nightmare. And if you just clean those things up, and you just like, if you are in a relationship, you just make sure that it's like a low maintenance one. That's the thing about relationships. Like it needs to be low maintenance. Like if you're with a woman or a man who is like infinitely difficult to deal with and they always want your attention, then it's just a complete no-go. So I think that's the main thing, is the relationship thing. But I like to keep things really simple, man. Like I try not to like introduce wacky shit to my diet or change anything. So
do you have any SOPs for managing your girlfriend?
No, I don't. But I've got some heuristics, but I don't know. I'm joking. I don't know. It's not something that needs to be managed. It's like there are things in life that shouldn't be like routinized or systemized, and a relationship is certainly one of them. However, I do annoy us from time to time where like if we go on a meal, like if we go out for dinner or something, like restaurants annoy me because of how inefficient they are. Like I'll be like, I'll tell her like, look, babe, you need to have picked out what you're going to eat before we get in. She's like, no, but I want to like wait. And then she'll be like, oh, but I don't know if I should get this cocktail or this cocktail. And I'm just like, just pick. It doesn't like the margin of pleasure is so insignificant here. Just pick. So that's one thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I understand that that's borderline psychopathic. So you can't systemize relationships, and if you try, things they don't go very well.
Yeah. I'm not surprised, to be honest. But in terms of vices, I know a lot of people, and I say a lot of people like I don't include myself because I'm obviously perfect, but a lot of people deal with like social media, phone addiction, potentially even like going out partying. Do you have any, I would say advice, but any systems that you put in place to mitigate like social media phone use?
Yeah, just get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, I don't have any systems for mitigation because I just don't use it. Like I think if you're at a point in your life where you want to focus on your business and you've got a vice like, I don't know, like drugs or alcohol, or something like that, like there's no point in trying to manage it, because you don't manage it, it manages you. So you just have to fucking remove it. So I don't have like Instagram on my phone. I don't have TikTok. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Snapchat. Literally the only two like outbound communication apps I have on my phone is WhatsApp and iMessage. And even then, hardly anyone has my number, so no one can contact me. But I just feel like you want to, like, social media increases your surface area. And like surface area, basically, it's like a term in maths. It's like how much space does something have when things can come into contact with it.
Yeah.
So like if you run a business and like you've got a goal and an objective, like you should know or be able to deduce what you need to do to achieve that goal. And then it's just a question of time. So like I know what I need to do to get to 8 figures, right? I've got it all mapped out. I've got the structure in my head and I can see what I need to do. It's just giving it like, 6 months. And the thing is if I go on Facebook, I naturally just immediately increase my surface area to which new ideas that are probably wrong can flow into my mind. Because I can guarantee like 95 to even 99% of the content you expose yourself to on social media platforms is going to be, it won't help you achieve your goal. So it's like, why would you go on them? It's like, if your goal is the main thing you want to achieve, why would you let some hedonistic pleasure interfere with something you really want? So yeah, I don't really have any methods for mitigation. I just don't go there.
100%.
Yeah.
Because at least the way I was thinking about it recently, obviously I watched Sam Ovens, he would just say, delete it, bro. Delete it.
That's the thing. Like that's where I learned it from. Because I tried to manage it where like,
exactly.
I try and like, I used to try and put my phone on like grayscale and like, set like screen time locks and stuff. But that's just what addicts do when they try to quit. So it's like, if you were trying to quit smoking, it's like any of these other addictions that prevent you from achieving goals or being healthy or having a life you want. It's like, if you're a full-time alcoholic, it's like, what do you do to mitigate your use of alcohol? Well, if you've got a problem, you go cold turkey, you remove it. And your brain will scream and kick and cry, but ultimately you just have to do it and be cold with yourself. So
it's a lot easier than just putting like the alcohol in the other room.
It doesn't work because it's there. So I'm just going to pull my curtain. But it doesn't work. It's not something that is. It's not like the only way to truly manage an addiction is complete removal, in my opinion.
Speaking of your opinions, to get to where you are. Yep. Sorry about this.
Let's go there.
Yeah. You probably, just based on the numbers, if you're doing better than 99% of people, you'll probably have unique opinions. What do you believe that most other people don't believe? Any off the top of your head?
There's a few. So like the first one is that anyone can be anyone. And that like so there's two main ones. I'm going to write the second one down before I forget. But the first one is self-solidification, right? And that's, I believe it is honestly like the biggest tragedy of the 21st century, is where people believe they are who they are and that's it and they can't change. For example, if I decided tomorrow I wanted to be a famous painter, I could be a famous painter. Even though I lack the ability at the moment, I do think, I haven't been practicing since the age of 3, so it's probably not going to be possible. But the thing that most people would disagree with me on is that premise that like anyone can do anything they want with enough time and if they don't die soon. So that's the first one, I would say, because it's pretty tragic that people just lock themselves into this sense of self they have and never change. The second one is non-binary thinking, and this sort of black and white tendency to be polarized towards certain extremes. And believing that you have to have an opinion on everything. So this is a bit of a paradox because you're asking me what my opinion is, and one of my opinions is that you shouldn't be so opinionated. But like I find that it's easy to beat people who think in black and white terms and don't have the intellectual prowess to read between the lines and look in grayscale. So those are two things that I think are true that most people don't.
So that
I also think the Earth is flat. I'm joking.
Earth is flat.
Don't you clip me on that? I don't think
he's not joking. Yeah, I'm just clipping that 3 seconds where Charlie says
What's your opinion? The Earth is flat.
No,
I don't believe the Earth is flat, but
I could ask some very cancelable follow-ups, but I'm not going to do that yet. And then in terms of, you're obviously very smart, or at least you appear very smart.
Thank you.
And, you apply a lot of frameworks, a lot of thinkings from not necessarily business, but things like physics, things like maths, things like science. Was that intentional? And how have you found it to be beneficial in business?
Yeah. So what you're referring to is called multidisciplinary thinking. And I don't think you necessarily do it intentionally, because it's something that you can't help but do if you understand like the key ideas. So yeah, I mean, if you understand like the core disciplines and the core premises of those disciplines, like biology, chemistry, physics, maths, systems thinking, all of that good stuff, and you truly understand it, and you give it the efficacy it deserves, then what you'll start to do is you'll start to see the world through those lenses, and it's infinitely valuable. And multidisciplinary thinking is something that, this is actually another thing that I would have added to that list of like things I believe to be true that other people don't, is that like, if you silo yourself to like one discipline, then you basically like you can only see like 1% of reality. So like the way I like to see it is like, when you're driving on like a highway and like you're trying to overtake someone, but you've got a blind spot and you can't see, like you have to sort of like lean around the corner. Like that's how most people are going about their lives. But when they do the overtake, they can't see like the whole window. If you don't understand like physics, for example, or let's take an easier one that's more relatable to business, like biology. If you don't understand like natural selection, interspecies competition, like energy conservation, like if you don't understand these basic ideas, then it'll get you, because someone that understands those things, it might seem weird, like, well, why the hell would you need to know that? But yeah, so I think that like you don't do it intentionally, but like this is what happened when I built EasyGrow, which is our product, where I had to make a series of videos called Acquisition Genesis, which explains my paradigm for acquisition. Because I was thinking about like, how the hell do I teach people how to get clients? And like, for basically 2 years, I'd been giving people the copy and the scripts and the sales scripts and all that stuff. And like, it works really well. But like, I was like, what's the thing that really moves the needle? And I was like, oh, well, I need to teach people how I created all the strategies I created. Well, where did that all come from? Well, it came from my paradigm. And that's using those ideas. So yeah, it's pretty damn important.
It really is. And I've been finding that myself throughout business as well. And it really is unintentional. For example, thinking in first principles.
I do it all the time now. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was about to go on to that. I mean, I've used it constantly and I didn't realize that I was using it. Just breaking things down to like, what are we actually doing? Like outreach is just showing something that we have to people that want it. And like, it's pretty much that simple. And I think that's what you've done a huge amount of in client acquisition. I mean, what's it? In EasyGrow?
Yeah, in Acquisition Genesis. Like
Acquisition Genesis.
Yeah, so I had to bring it back to the first principles. Because if you don't have first principles thinking is a framework where, for people watching, where you basically deduce the thing you're dealing with down to the core pieces of the puzzle that cannot be disputed further. And like I realized with client acquisition that like really all it comes down to is like human, right? Because you need to have a human, because you need someone to convert. So you have to have a human, and then you have to have a trigger or a stimuli. So a stimulus is something that you expose to the human. And then when you expose the stimulus to the human, you get the action. So the three things that basically client acquisition is literally just stimulus, right? Which could be a piece of copy or a sales script or something. Stimulus plus human equals action. And the action is the actual conversion through a series of like psychological stages to get to the client. And it took me like months of thinking to figure that out, because you can't see it. But once you have that framework, you're like, shit, I can actually reason up from here. So yeah, I mean, I do it all the time, and I do it by accident now with first principles and stuff like, and it becomes extremely useful, because then you can actually start to make decisions and reason with what is objectively true as opposed to what you think is true. Because those are usually two very different things.
100%. And it's really like seeing things that other people don't see. Like you said, the blind spots. People are just looking at the surface level, being completely confused. And you're just like, yeah, but you're just doing that and that. Like, oh.
And that comes with hindsight. You know, like for example, on coaching calls and stuff, where people ask me these like questions with all this context and stuff, and I'll just give them like a 2-word answer and just be like, so what? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I don't have to even think about that. It's like, it's very useful to it's also the critical thinking ability you need to have to do that is pretty good. And like I say pretty good, but you need to have it where, like, if you're dealing with, like, if I'm dealing with a client, let's say they run a marketing agency, it's like, what are the first principles of a marketing agency? Like, if you boil that all the way down, like, what is it? Well, the first one's going to be the niche, right? And then the second one is going to be the problem, right? So, like, what's the niche you're serving, and what's the problem of trying to serve them? And if you define those two things, you get to the core of the problem really quickly. So,
100%. And before we go on to Easy Grow, because we just mentioned that, on the coaching calls, right? I was obviously on Imperium's calls, and there's tons of people. Obviously, you've faced a wide array of questions, some good, some very not good.
Yeah.
What should people be asking more of on these calls?
Good question. So the best question I've ever had on a coaching call is, and this is one that I thought of a while ago, and I was waiting for someone to ask me, and they finally did. And the golden question is like, what question would you ask yourself if you were me? And that's like the best question, because it forces the person that you're learning from to condense all of their knowledge into a question. And that puts the person into a pretty difficult situation. But in terms of what people should be asking more of, I think it's less about like, that's what really, so you've done the same thing to me. You put me in a real bit of trouble. Let me think, because I think you need to know. All right, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. You ask questions around the existing problem you have, right? So people come in and they're like, oh, Charlie, like, I want to, like, what do I do if this happens? It's like, well, has it happened? No. So why are you trying to solve a problem that you don't know exists? It's like, you've only got so much time and energy and cognitive capacity and fucking mental kilojoules that you can invest into your business. So you better bloody invest them into the actual thing you need to invest them into. So instead of like a specific answer, it's kind of like you only ask questions on the problem, and then you get the knowledge you need to solve the problem. You then apply it. You solve that problem through the application of the knowledge. Then the next problem manifests, and then you ask questions around that. So that's how it should be done.
100%. Yeah, that's a great answer, by the way.
Thank you.
Because it's just solving the direct problem, the problem that's actually in front of you.
Yeah, dude. Right, people ask me like the most random stuff, like, "Hey, Charlie, like, what is the best book you've ever read?" It's like,
I see that one all the time.
Yeah, it's like it's a good question to ask, because sure, then you know what book to read, but like knowing what book to read isn't going to solve the most important blundering issue that you can see in the business right now. And like, you know, if someone's like, let's say the problem is sales. Let's say they've solved the appointment booking problem. If the problem is sales, it's like, and they're like, oh, I just can't close deals, right? And then you need to be like, well, why? And then they'll be like, oh, because like I don't know. Well, why? It's like, well, you don't know what you don't know, so you need to go and learn sales. So I think it's important just to ask around the problem and not anything else. Because because you've got like billions of neurons, if you just put all of them onto one focal point and you make that your life for a while, then things get really easy. That's how you do it.
Yeah, I think if you just sit in the pain of your problem, and I think that'll be useful.
That's the thing. It's like people like have this massive pain, and then they just go and ask what book they can read. So they can feel like they're being productive by reading a book, but they're just actually not solving the thing that is most painful.
Because I see everyone asking, Charlie, what's the best book you've read? But then it's like, for what? It's like, do you want like a cookbook or how to clean the sink? Like, there's no context.
Exactly. It's people looking for like trite knowledge that gives them a perceived level of productivity that is basically fake, so they can justify not doing what they need to do. And it's just I understand why people do it, but it's just stupid.
That's a great way to put it, because if they're reading a book, then it's better than watching a YouTube video, but either way, they're still not doing the work.
Exactly.
Let's get on to Easy Grow. What is Easy Grow?
So Easy Grow is my product. It's kind of like my baby, so I do get quite excited when I talk about it. But Easy Grow is basically something that I've been working on for about 9 months. And it's basically the thing we sell. It's kind of just a collection of systems that people can install to acquire more clients. I think at the moment we've got 11 different systems people can install for client acquisition. But dude, we cover everything, man. We've got like 6 outbound systems, 5 inbound systems, 1 paid system. We've got a sales system. And then obviously we teach the paradigm and the mindset stuff as well. But yeah, that's how it works. And we also guarantee 20 clients, which is pretty much unheard of. So it's going really well.
Yeah. Guarantee 20 clients, but you'll wire them 5K.
Yeah. So the offer's kind of hard to say no to right now. So like if basically we know it works. So we just say to people, look, if you use it and you do everything properly and you do what we tell you to do, if you haven't signed 20 paying clients within 6 months, then we basically give you a full cashback refund. And we also wire transfer you $5,000. And like, you can't really argue with that. If you've got the resources to invest, there's literally no reason not to. And that's kind of how I wanted it to be. And so far, the reception of it has been really, really good. And like clients have been really helpful. We've always had refunds on our products, but we thought we'd add the wire just to be a bit spicier. So, yeah.
100%. And just to add my 2 cents to that, I've been through Imperium multiple times. And I can already say it's everything you need. If you're watching this now and this isn't an ad, I can genuinely vouch for it probably being the best program that I've done. Genuinely, hands down. It will genuinely give you everything you need. So if Easy Grow is an upgraded version of that, then come on, guys.
So like we had this sort of thing where the old product we had, the old program, like I'm obviously subjective here, but it was the best thing on the market in terms of like building and starting an agency and making client acquisition pretty straightforward. And I think a lot of that was because the bar has been set quite low. And you know, it was hard to make the product, but it wasn't hard to make the best product. Now there are other people in my space who I respect heavily and who do have incredible products, but most of the people, 95% of the people who make these I'll help you get client courses, they're not very good. All it really takes is some effort. But so we had the best product and we basically made it 10 times better. And the reason I'm quite happy with it is because in order for someone to truly compete with us, they need to have a better product than us. And that means they need to go through more than 9 months of absolute hell on earth, which is a very hard thing to do. So I think we're in a pretty good position, but I also don't want to have, you know, a false sense of security, because the problem with good products is that if you know you've got a good one, you become very comfortable and very complacent. And so I know we've created something really good, but I'm also terrified it's awful. And that's a weird paradox and, you know, conundrum to sort of manage in your head. And this comes back to that non-binary thinking thing, because like if you think that you're really fucking good, then you stop trying, and it's through trying that you become good. So naturally, I'm always terrified, mate. Like I've made it now, and like I'm really proud of it, and I'm actually really proud of what we've created, and I'm really confident in it. But I also look at it, and I still think this is just not good. So I don't know how I managed to have both, but it seems to have served me so far.
Yeah, it's like a useful balance. Useful balance of both.
Exactly.
All right, that's great, and we'll probably talk about Easy Grow again near the end.
Yeah.
But the follow-up question to that is, because on the internet there are endless people you can learn from, and if you even open up Facebook or even open up Twitter, there's going to be 10,000 people who are making 100 million per month, apparently. How do you determine who you want to learn from?
That's a really good question. So I think that like if you look past all of these like comment me Facebook posts, you know, or the DMs you receive, if you avoid all of that, if you avoid all the bullshit, I think that like you start to learn that it's not hard to find the best if you actually look, because like you've only got to start asking a few people to figure out like who's at the top and who you want to learn from. Like Sam Evans is a primary example of this, right? So like Sam Evans, obviously he's now moved on to school. May God rest his consulting soul. But like now that he's moved away, it wasn't hard to know that Sam Evans was the go-to person to learn from if you wanted to start a consulting business. And the reason behind that is because he just had the best product and the best methodologies for teaching. And he wasn't loud on social media. He didn't do the DMs. Obviously, all of his appointments would be booked through ads. But it didn't take much exploration to find out who truly was good. But here's the thing. It's like, what you have to do is you want to get to the top, right? So, for example, like, let's say that you are running let's say you run an agency, right? And you want to find out who to learn from. Now, I might be biased in terms of where this is going, right? But like, you know, if you're thinking about learning from people, find out who they learn from. And then find out who they learn from, and then find out who they learn from, who they learn from, who they learn from. And then usually you can get all the way, like, for example, if someone followed that chain and they got to me, then they'd get to Sam Ovens, then they'd get to Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud and Darwin, and then they'd get all the way back to, like, you know, ancient philosophy and all this stuff. But I think you don't have to go that extreme. But I think just finding out who people learn from is the main thing, because then you can go straight to the top. You can go to the source of the knowledge where it's usually the most pure. Because if you want to drink from a river, it's pretty helpful to climb the mountain first, find the source, and bottle it there. Otherwise, it might have run through some sheep carcasses or something. So you've got to be careful. But I'm weird with my metaphors.
Gets the point across. I can't lie.
Yeah, well,
and the comment that I'll probably get very often, this might be confidential, but who does Charlie Morgan learn from? You don't have to say me. It's okay.
Yeah, no, Ethan Welby is my primary source of knowledge. So I mean, like, I got most of my business paradigm from Sam Ovens, and I've read too many books for my own good.
Yeah.
There's no one. Sam Ovens is the primary source of knowledge from like a business standpoint. He's not really actively teaching anymore, so that sort of dried up. However, this is going to sound extremely egotistical and narcissistic, but I'm learning a lot just by doing my own thing. Like, for example, when I was building Easy Grow, I think I learned more about client acquisition than ever before. And it was just through the application of my own thought. I didn't read a single book in the last 9 months whilst I was building. So I think that, like, you what I've learned is that you know a lot more than you know if you just think.
You just reflect on it.
If you just reflect on stuff, and it's like the first principle thing. Like, I didn't know I knew that, but I was acting it out. So yeah, that's the main source of knowledge.
Man, I've got so many questions.
Fire.
But on that point, let's say when you were like under 100K a month with the done for you, because I assume most people watching this will be.
Yeah.
How did you balance production versus consumption of books, courses, information? What was the distribution like?
Well, I didn't produce anything when we were doing done for you marketing for gyms.
Because I was just taking action, I mean, for production.
What do you mean by production? Could you define that?
Like working in the business, not like producing content.
Yeah, so this was another one of those times where, like, I didn't have much time to read or do anything. Because here's the thing about knowledge, like, I think this goes back to that question you asked me about things that I disagree with that most people agree with. And I might regret saying this because I might be wrong. But I think that, like, you don't need... I was going to say you don't need a massive array of knowledge. But my point is that, like, you need the right knowledge and then you just need to implement it. Yeah. Adding more usually just introduces more complexity. So I'm in a position now where, like... And I'll answer your question in a second. Yeah. I'm in a position now with my business where... We signed 37 clients last week, and I literally didn't do a thing. I spent, like, one of the days I spent watching the Grand Tour and, like, on Amazon Video. And I think we signed, like, 8 clients in a day. And that's, like, the reason I'm in that position is because I was really burned out then. But the point is that, like, a lot of my time now will be spent exploring new knowledge and chasing new knowledge. But I think to get to 100 grand a month, it's very easy to procrastinate with knowledge. So it's like, if you're building, you'll learn more by working than you will by reading. Like, you'll learn way more by doing 100 cold calls about sales than reading 10 books on sales. Because and even if, let's say you read 10 books on sales, let's say you learn 100 lessons on sales, right? But if you do 100 cold calls, you might only learn 2 lessons on sales, but those 2 lessons will be way more valuable. They'll be way more applicable, and you'll remember them way better than the reading. So, like, I think that, like, the consumption of knowledge is quite important, but once you've got what you need, you shouldn't consume any more until you need more, right? So I didn't really have like a specific set balance, but like when we were running NorthFlow as like a done for you thing, like if we had a problem, like there's an example where, you know, we wanted to increase our client retention. So I spent, I think, like a whole week just listening to every single podcast on gym retention I could find. There's quite a lot of them actually, surprisingly, because like, we wanted to increase the retention of our clients, right? So them keeping their members for longer. So then I went away. I spent a whole week just consuming all this stuff on it. Came back with all these ideas. We built some stuff out for clients, and it worked. But beyond that, I haven't looked at gym retention in 5 years, and I have no reason to, right? So it comes back to the question of ask questions around and find things on the existing problem you have, and that's fine. Now, there's a time and a place to read for general pleasure, like Stoicism, for example. I still read that stuff because I find it useful, but ultimately, like, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I wasn't really expecting like a definite answer, because I don't think there really is one.
No, it's not. You can't, like, it's once again comes to this black and white thing, because, you know, if I said like, oh, well, I spend 30% of my time consuming knowledge and 70% of my time applying it, it's like, there's a time where you need to spend 100% application and 100% consumption, like that gym retention example. And if you fall into this binary state of like thinking, oh, it's 2 p.m. now I'm going to go and read for half an hour. Like it doesn't, but like if you don't need to do it, it doesn't make sense to do it. Right. So yeah.
100%. And what you said so true. Like people reading before they're doing the actual task. So for example, sales, it's like until you do all these calls, you have no reference experiences to actually apply this information to. So it's all just theory before you actually do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've read, I don't know, probably about 40 or 50 books on sales, maybe more. But like I think I've done, Bo and I calculated, I've done about 2,500 sales calls in my time. And I can tell you that the books are just useless. Like the books were somewhat helpful at the beginning because they give you somewhat of an idea, but very quickly you also start to realize that a lot of the ideas in those books are wrong. So I'd rather spend an hour, if I want to learn sales, I'd rather spend 1 hour doing a sales call than 1 hour reading a book. So
yeah. And on that note, I think, like you were saying, you made a great point. Like there's kind of like low hanging fruit in terms of learning things. And that's just by asking like yourself the question. Like if there was a simple solution, what would I do?
Exactly.
You know?
Well, I think that like people overcomplicate things, and they also think they don't trust themselves to be right. So like this is something I had with EasyGrow when I was building it, is I was like, right, I know that I'm a fucking badass at this whole client acquisition thing. I know that I have the answers up here. I know I can teach what I need to teach. I just need to unravel it and unwrap it.
Yeah.
But that only really comes with having the experience and having done something over and over again. So
100%.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, you were saying that you signed around 37 clients without you having to do anything. What would be some practical steps that someone could take to get out of, or to transition from the glorified freelancer to having an efficient, systemized business?
All right. Well, it comes down to a few things. The most important is appointment flow, right? Like if you haven't got appointment flow, nothing else. There's no point having anything else. And the main driver of your appointment flow is going to be your offer, right? So if you have a good offer, like I always say, like, I don't say this, Shakespeare said this, it definitely wasn't me, but a rising tide raises all ships. I think that was Shakespeare. It might have been someone else. I've got no idea, but basically it's a pretty good point.
Let's just say Shakespeare said it.
Shakespeare, yeah. Good old Shaky, mate. So rising tide raises all ships, and like your offer is the tide, right? And the ships in the dock are your systems, right? So what this means is like, the better the offer is, the higher the tide goes, which means the more the ships are raised. So if you imagine you've got one ship, which is sales calls, you've got one ship, which is organic YouTube, you've got one ship, which is cold email, you've got another, which is ads, then you've got another ship, which is clients actually doing the work. Like if you just have a better offer, all of those things naturally get better. So if I didn't have a good offer, it'd be significantly harder for me to step back from the business, because the offer gives the systems the fuel they need to have this sort of self-sustaining. It's like nuclear fission. You don't have to, you click once and then it goes on forever. So that's the first thing. The second thing, obviously, behind the offer is the appointment flow, making sure that that's predictable, because like the whole secret to being able to sit and watch Amazon video all day whilst you make hundreds of thousands of dollars is having a good team, right? But you can't hire sales reps if you haven't got the appointments to give them. So people make this mistake where they try and hire a sales rep before they're fully booked themselves. Like, you're only qualified to hire a sales rep once you have exceeded your time limit of calls yourself. Anything before that is premature and will really cost you. So, like, right now I'm in a pretty good position where my business runs itself and I don't have to work if I don't want to, but it's taken me like 2.5 years of pure agony to get here. So it's not something that like is easy, but you have to build an insane product, which allows you to have an insane offer, which allows you to have an insane flow of appointments, which then allows you to have an insane sales conversion rate, whether you're teaching people or not. And it all comes, it sort of happens in that order, and it takes a couple of years to build all of that. So, yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Whenever you answer these questions, I'm always thinking which direction we can go, because it's like all potential routes of questions. So
it's like a labyrinth, mate. This is the great thing about long form conversations, though, is like you can take things in you usually start with a list of questions that you want to ask. Yeah. And you go in all these tangents, which is, I think following the tangent is pretty important because it keeps the audience engaged, I reckon. I do this with YouTube videos. Like I'll plan on making a video on something, then I'll have like one idea, and then I'm just gone, mate. And like the initial concept of the video is completely lost. But yeah.
And that is another thread, that one of the 12 other threads in my mind right now, YouTube. So just to carry on with that excellent analogy of Shakespeare's quote, we'll just give it to Shakespeare.
Yeah.
That the rising tide rises the ships, whatever. I think another thing that adds to rising all the ships is YouTube.
Oh, mate.
Because like you mentioned, I think it is either in your course or on YouTube, you said that YouTube is like a lubricant for all the cogs in the system. It just makes everything else easier.
Yeah. So YouTube is kind of like what oil is to an engine.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when you've got a YouTube channel, everything gets easier because you have more authority. It's not the YouTube channel that does the oils the machine. It's the authority and the status you have in your market, right? But that comes from YouTube. So YouTube's like one of the main things for me right now. In fact, it is like the main thing, because if I ask myself, like, one thing you want to get into the habit of doing as a business owner is every morning asking yourself, like, what's the main thing I can do today that moves the business forward? Like, what's that real one main thing that I need to do? And for me, it's usually YouTube, because it's where we get, a huge flow of appointments and authority, and it helps the sales reps. And, it also encourages people in the program to do better, because then they can get on client interviews like you did, for example. It's just, it makes the world go round for us. It makes things, it's the best decision. But besides partnering with my business partner, Bo, and making the hires on the team that I've made, like doing YouTube is the third most important decision that I've ever made. Like, it goes in that order. Like, the business partner, Bo, that was the best decision I ever made for business. Hiring the people I've hired, second most important decision. And then doing YouTube. Actually, probably above all of that would be focusing on the product, but it's sort of down line in that order. YouTube's brilliant, man. If anyone's watching this and they haven't got a YouTube channel and they're in business, like, you should just start one. Even if you don't know how to do it, like, I'm sure you've noticed as well, it's probably massively helping you, and you haven't even got a huge audience yet. So
I was about to say, no offense.
You
even with my incredibly supportive 500 subscribers, it genuinely makes a huge difference. Almost every single sales call, it's like, I saw your message, then I checked your YouTube and I watched like 5 videos. I'm like, all right.
Dude, welcome to the call. The damage you can do with like a couple of hundred subscribers is pretty ridiculous. Because it's not about like, it's not about like, because I always used to, my paradigm for YouTube was like subscribers and like how many subs can I get? But then I've realized like the concentration of the subscribers has way more significance. So like, for example, we did a launch video. You mentioned this before we started the interview. We did this launch video and we fully booked all the reps for a whole week out in advance. We had to open 2 more calendar days in advance. We booked 4 reps up. We're having to hire more. And from that one YouTube video alone, we signed 37 clients, which is about 370 grand in lifetime value in a week, which is awesome. But like, that's like, I haven't got a huge amount of subs. I've only got like 19K. And I actually want to keep it that way, because I think about like the people that could subscribe to me. It's like, I could get I could start making those generic YouTube videos like how to stop wanking if you're a man, right? And those videos would probably do quite well, but ultimately I don't want people who watch those videos to click on my funnel, because the end goal is appointments, right? I'm not doing YouTube for subscribers. I'm not doing it for views. I'm doing it to get people who are qualified to buy our offer onto our landing page. And like, I think the mistake people make with YouTube is optimizing for fame as opposed to niche-based authority. So if you keep that in check, like, YouTube is bloody wonderful.
You could also argue that the number of subscribers attributes to your authority, just because of the pure like social proof nature of it.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. But there's a point of diminishing returns on that, where the difference between having 20,000 people following you and 40,000 people following you, like it's not going to bypass someone's action threshold on a sales call with any more significance if the gain of those followers isn't concentrated to your niche.
100%.
That makes sense. So, yeah.
And then because you've gotten to this point, you know, I was about to say relatively quickly, but then I saw you've been uploading for genuinely like 2 years.
Yeah.
And like when you first messaged about Easy Grow, the new thing, and you were recording the YouTube modules, you were at, I think I remember, like 7,500.
Yeah.
And that was like a month or two ago. And you've just seen like exponential growth to almost 20,000 at this point.
Yeah. So like so I've been uploading on YouTube for about 2 years. I mean, it will mark 2 years in March, which is in like a couple of weeks. And like, you know, the first 1,000 subscribers was the most difficult, but as soon as you turn on monetization, things get really easy, because then YouTube has a financial incentive to show your videos, right? So 1,000 subscribers or 3,000 hours watch time, I think you need both. But yeah, like the funny thing is I started making the YouTube organic module in Easy Grow, and like you said, and I think I had like 7.5k subs, and then like by the time I finished the module, which was like a week or two later, I had like 10k. So we had this sort of like exponential spike where we gained like 10,000 subscribers in like 2 months or something, which was really great, really helpful. Now it's leveled off and like the growth is way more linear again. But that's usually how YouTube works, is like you grow linearly for a while and then you have like this random exponential spike, and then it's linear and then a random spike. But ultimately, like I used to look at the sub count and stuff like that, but like you'll learn this as you build your channel as well. Like you have to not check anything. So don't look at how many subscribers you gain. Don't read the comments. Don't do anything, because it just gets way too like out of hand if you're not careful. Like I don't touch the comments anymore. I used to be obsessed with them, which is a sad thing to admit, but I'd rather be honest.
But most of the comments are like, "Love from Brazil. I love you, Charlie. You're the best."
Well, that's the problem. It's a huge problem, because then you get addicted to reading good things about yourself, which is the same thing as the product. Like when a client comes to us and says that we've created a really good product, I'm always really grateful for the compliment, but I'm also like, I've got my fists up, like, I can't take this to heart, because then I'm gonna stop trying. So with the YouTube videos, like, if I ever wanted to, I could go and read like 10 comments and feel great about myself, but it's not about feeling great about yourself. It's about making great content. And if you feel like you're making amazing content, you stop trying. So yeah.
And knowing what you know now, in retrospect, what are some of the things that you wouldn't focus on or focus on less? And what are some of the things that you focus on more in terms of YouTube? So
I'd have built the channel earlier.
Yeah.
It launched. I would have started the YouTube channel. That's my biggest regret, is not doing it like a year earlier.
Wow.
Well, no, I think I started my YouTube channel maybe like, I started doing it properly like 6 months after we started the business. So that was pretty quick, but I wish I'd done it sooner. In terms of my focus, like, so we made some mistakes at the beginning of the business, of Imperium Acquisition, where Bo and I would be handling all the support personally. But that's because we were afraid. So like, I don't know when you came on board, it was quite a while ago, but we used to have like these group chats on Facebook where anyone could message me and Bo anything at any time and we'd respond. And that was fine when we had like 40 clients, but it quickly got out of hand. But it was a good thing, because we had this money back guarantee, we were quite afraid of like, things going wrong. So we kept a finger on the pulse. We would have got rid of that a lot faster. My second mistake on what to focus on is like finding a really good sales rep at the beginning. Like I had a bunch of them sort of sat under my nose for like 6 months that I didn't realize. Other than that, I think my focus has always been in a pretty good place. It's like I can map out the math or what we need for 8 figures if you like. Would that be helpful? Like I've figured this out like down to an absolute T. Like there's 3 things that's 2. There's 3 things that we need.
Man.
Basically, if we have the best product in the market, right, which I believe we do, but we only will if we keep trying, then that's one piece. That's one of the pieces of the puzzle for 8 figures for Imperium. The second thing is 1,000 appointments a month, right? So in order to get to 8 figures, we need 1,000 appointments a month. And the third thing is a 20% sales conversion rate with a 70% show up rate. If we have those 3 things, 8 figures is easy, right? Because I figured out with the appointment flow, if you have 1,000 appointments, 70% show rate, you conduct 700, 20% sales conversion rate, you close 114 clients. You knock 20% off of that because we're doing payment plans, and sometimes people don't finish payment plans if they have certain situations, which means that realistically you're actually signing about 95 clients or whatever. If you times that by like 10K, for example, then that's 950 grand a month, which times by 12 is more than 8 figures. So like that's sort of like, if you're wondering about what I'm focused on at the moment, it's just, do we have the best product? Are we booking 1,000 appointments a month? Do we have a 70% show rate with a 20% sales conversion rate? That is now, those are the only things that I have to get right. And if I get those things right, it's just a question of letting time elapse. And that's kind of where we're at the moment. So
that is beautiful. I'm going to listen back over that because the simplicity.
It's not complicated, man. Like it really isn't complicated at all. It's like what's your goal at the moment?
My goal right now is 200K.
200K. Are you doing done for you or done with you or do it yourself?
It's done for you right now.
Done for you. Well, first of all, you're not going to get there.
That is one of my questions.
Yeah, you won't. You can get there, but it'll be hell. But so I won't ask how much you're charging because obviously we don't want to discuss price before people book calls with you, for example. But like, all you have to do is you have to reverse engineer the maths, and once you've done that, it's not tricky. So that's all I'm focusing on. Like if I'm working on anything that isn't 1,000 appointments a month, having the best product, or 20% sales conversion rate, 70% show rate, I'm working on the wrong thing. So for example, I'm doing this interview with you now because it contributes to the 1,000 appointments a month, right? Yeah. And like all of my actions and decisions and all of my time and energy is put into those 3 things. And there will be other things down the line. Like you could also argue like, oh, well, you need to have a good accounting system. And you also need to have you need to make sure that you've got a good operation system. But a lot of that is negligible because once it's done, you don't have to focus on it. So ideally, like most business owners, they just need to sit down, figure out what 3 or 4 things they need to do to get what they want, and then just block out everything else. Because, dude, I get people message me all the time with like random stuff and stuff that they think I should do, and I'm just like, no. I say no to like 90% of the stuff that people chuck at me. So,
can imagine. Yeah. I actually did the reverse engineering exercise twice in the last 2 weeks. Yeah. We got it down to something very simple as well. On that note, what advice would you give in terms of the transition from done for you to done with you?
Accept the fact that it's going to be really painful to make. Yeah. That's the main thing, is it's not easy. Like you have to sort of accept that it's going to be really difficult. Dude, it's just like you just have to make the best possible thing you can make. And you have to be willing to sacrifice a significant chunk of your year or your life to making sure that that happens. Like the problem that people have with the transition from done for you to do it yourself or done with you is they get lazy. It's like, it's painful to make a really good course or a good product. So they let that pain, they let that pain filter through their, actions and decision-making processes. The other thing is like, approach it with no fear and let go of selling done for you once and for all. Because you're always going to fall back on this thing in the back of your mind. But like, oh, if I'm on a sales call and I'm selling done with you, I can always sell done for you as a back end. Like, don't do both, just do one. Because like, it might feel like you've got this, it comes back down to fear and scarcity mindset. But like with Imperium, we must have lost like, at this point, hundreds of people that could have come on board for a done for you service, but it doesn't lend itself to long-term scale. So we said no. So like when you start looking at the transition from done for you to done with you, and you have to make all these difficult decisions and do this painful work, I think a done with you business, it's easier to think in 5-year time horizons. But with a done for you business, you've got no choice but to think in a few months. So when you've got like a product as opposed to a service, you can think about scale and long term. But when you're doing everything for everyone, it's very hard to isolate yourself away from the next 2 weeks because you're always thinking about working for clients and doing these things. Whereas when you've got a course, all of the cognitive energy that would be going into doing everything for people has already been completed, and then you can take all of that capacity and put it into other things. Like done for you just simply doesn't scale. It's possible to get to 100 grand a month with done for you, but it's not the thing that people make it out to be. It sounds fun. I can tell you it's really difficult. It's hell on earth. And that might be because I didn't build it properly. And I'm sure there'd be people with big businesses done for you that would argue differently. But knowing what I know now about doing like programs instead, like I would never run a done for you thing again, unless I was doing like 50 grand a month retainers.
50 a month.
Well, that's where you have to value yourself at, man. It's like, you know, I know that if someone paid me 50 grand a month and I was spending like doing like a part-time role with them, like on their acquisition systems, they'd make way more than 50 grand a month. So like, you know, you sort of pick and choose. But even then, if someone came to me and said, hey, can I pay you 50 grand a month to have your mind for, you know, for 2 days a week of consulting, I'd say no, because it's just, you know, it's not worth it, which sounds crazy, but you know, and then that sounds really egotistical and grandiose, but like you have to start having these rules in place. Yeah.
If you look at the opportunity cost, it's like 2 days a week. Like,
yeah,
you do a lot more.
It's a lot of time. And even like 1 day a week is too much because like maybe one day of my time right now isn't quite worth 50 grand, but it will be in 10 years. Exactly. And like the actions that I'm taking now are building that opportunity in the long term. So yeah.
And you base your time off of who you're looking to become as opposed to what you are now.
Yeah. So like the value of your time, I mean, you can fall into this problem where like you think you're worth more than you are in terms of like an hourly rate. But what I like to do with my time is like I'll sort of set like what do I want my time to be worth per hour? And then what you start doing is you start making it changes the way that you make decisions, because then suddenly like justifying a meal delivery service is different. Because for me, let's say for example, I was going to do a meal delivery service and it was 10 meals a week, which means that dinner and lunch taken care of, right? It's like that might cost me $100, right? But to make those meals, prepare them, wash them up, buy them, everything, that might take me like, you know, 4 hours a week. That values my time at $25 if I choose to not, like $25 an hour if I choose to not go with the meal delivery service. And I want my time to be valued at like 10 grand an hour. So when I'm looking at this stuff, like, let's another example. Let's say that a friend of mine is like, hey, can you come and feed my cat? I'm like, how long is it going to take? Like 20 minutes? That's like fucking $3 grand. No. No, the argument, the difference is that you can't fall into that thinking constantly when it's only when you've got working hours. Because if I'm outside of working, if I'm outside of working hours and I'm in the evening and my girlfriend wants me to come and pick her up from a bar or something, why should be at a bar on her own? It's a different story. Well, then I wouldn't be like anything like it. But if I'm between, you know, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Friday, then that time thing is like I religiously abide by it. But if you're not careful on like Sundays, you're trying to relax and you're just thinking, "Fuck, that's 20 grand. Fuck, that's 30 grand." Like, that's not how you want to think. You know. But just when it's at work, otherwise it becomes a problem.
And again, so many different threads that we can take. Is burnout real?
Pardon?
Is burnout real?
Yeah.
Really?
Mate, yeah. Burnout's like, a lot of the time it's not, because a lot of the time it's just pain avoidance in disguise. But I've burned myself out, making Easy Grow specifically, I burned myself out probably about like, I think 4 times. Like one time was real fucking bad. That was the time when I just finished it. But yeah, burnout's real, man. Because like you're a biological entity. You've only got so much energy. You've only got like, the way I see it is like, if you first principle it, it's like you've got what I would refer to as psychological energy, which is like, imagine it's like you've got like a meter, right? and you've got like psychological kilojoules, like or from calories that you've burned and digested in your mind, right? And like you have these reserves, and like if you deplete them and go beyond the depletion, then you enter this sort of reserve where you're sort of like, it's like working out when you're fasted. It's like your body can only do that for so long before it starts to digest its own muscles, right? If you're not careful and you starve yourself, that takes a long time to get to. But the good thing about burnout is the more you burn yourself out, the higher your reserves naturally become because your tolerance to the work is significantly greater. But I would say burnout's real because like you've only got to work like 7 days a week for a month and do 12 hours a day to find out that that's true. It's definitely real.
100%. And your version of 12 hours is probably very different to other people's version of 12 hours because yours is focused. Theirs is, 2 hours of work and then like 10 hours of...
The funny thing I found about burnout is I'm way more susceptible to burning out when my days are filled with multitasking. So when I've got like just a singular focus and I'm just all my energy and mind is just on one thing, then it's fine. But it's when I've got to do lots of other things at the same time or start making other decisions and doing other things. So an example of this, and this isn't typical traditional advice. When I was building Easy Grow, I stopped going to the gym. And that's like part of the reason. There was other individual health reasons like long COVID behind that. But part of the reason I stopped going to the gym is because it meant that I could simplify my diet away from having to like make all these decisions. It also meant that I wasn't thinking about what sort of training I was doing. Now I would still supplement that with walking like 5 kilometers a day. So I was still moving, I was still exercising. But like it sounds extreme and that's sort of why the program is the way it is instead of it being so good. But like, I didn't want to like, because I find that when I'm in like, when I'm working out, I'm still thinking about it. And that's quite healthy because you want to work out. But if you're just trying to go like, really hard on one thing, then yeah. So anyway, like you said, the 12-hour, like an hour, I could do in 1 hour what a normal person could probably do in 6. It depends on like what they're working on, what they're focusing on and stuff. But you do naturally become more efficient as you go. But now I haven't got much to do, which is a different sort of situation. So, so yeah.
That's fair enough.
Have you burned out before?
I don't think so.
Really?
I've had one time where I think it was pain avoidance. Again, when I was first starting out, things just weren't going well. I just didn't want to work. But it wasn't like a...
Well, like burnout, the way to recognize it is when it starts manifesting as physical symptoms. So when you don't want to work, that's not burnout. But when you start feeling like drained and exhausted and foggy and tired and irritable, if you're not ill and you've been working really hard, it's usually because you burned yourself out. Like I had it once before where like, dude, I started to have like these fucking like, I worked myself and I wouldn't recommend anyone does this, and I'm not proud of it. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. Like I worked myself to the point where like I actually, I can't really describe it, but it just felt like I was just walking through like a fucking haze, like a fog.
Oh, just like
brain fog that is so extreme that like you don't feel real. You just completely disassociate. And the only reason that happened is because I just did too much fucking work, bro. It's horrible. But that was because I went like 3 months, like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to see what it was like. It wasn't worthwhile at all. So
saying that, then maybe I have gotten pretty close. I've had quite a few weeks where it is just like, it's just numb. Things are just...
Yeah.
Either way, I'm still alive. On that point, on that point, obviously you value your time very much. And I can say from my own experience, at least, I get many messages of people saying, I'll work for free, I'll edit your videos for free. Can I just get like some information on how to get started? And if that's the case for me, can't imagine how it is for you. How would people actually provide value to someone in your position? Assuming they don't just give you like a couple billion in cash.
Well, so like, I mean, it comes down to talent. So like, I'll give you an example, right? So we're about to onboard a sales rep. Usually we only ever hire sales reps from our pool of clients. And that's sort of how we've always done it. But there's this guy called Jacob who I'm going to try out. And he hasn't got much experience with sales, but the dude followed up on me like 30 times.
Jacob, if you're watching this, man.
Yeah.
No pressure.
That was exactly. Now he's under the gun. But like, that's an example. Like, I get people all the time messaging me being like, hey, like I'll do sales calls for you for free. or like, you know, hey, I'll like, here's an example with the short form video offers that you always get, because I get a fucking ton of them.
Dude,
like,
every day.
If someone messaged me saying, hey, I can do short form videos, but if someone every single day took one of my videos and made a short and said, hey, you can upload this for free, I'm not going to charge. If they did that for a month, I'd have no fucking choice but to hire them, because they're just adding value every single day. And it takes effort to do that. And it's also quite risky. But, you know, you have to be, if you want to work for, and I found this as well, like when, you know, reaching out to YouTubers and stuff ages ago, like you've just got to be really persistent, man. But in terms of people adding value, it's just like, show me you're really talented. Like this guy who's we're about to onboard as a sales rep, he said, hey, give me a Calendly event and I'll book you calls for free. Don't even tell me what to do. I'll just do it. And he did it. And I was like, all right, you know, you're proving yourself, like, you know, you really want it. So, but yeah, the short form video things piss me off as well, because like people think that's a good niche. It's not a good niche at all.
Everyone is on it.
It's not good. It's not. It's like the same.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because it's not. It doesn't require skill or talent. Anyone can just put subtitles and emojis and sound effects on the videos. It doesn't require talent. So you can't differentiate yourself on talent. You can only differentiate yourself on price. So like the short form video offer thing is a race to the bottom, because with media buying or with organic attraction or consulting, it requires genuine, like your understanding can go really deep. Now, there's an element of this where, yes, you can get incredibly good at short form content, like Hormozis, for example. But even then, the cap at which someone can produce something great isn't that good. And it's not hard to become extremely talented at it, because it's just like you're taking 30-second clips, you're putting some viral music in the background, you're then putting some subtitles in, then you're introducing like some emojis here and there. You shake the screen every now and then, bang. Anyone can figure that out. And, you know, all it takes is for people in third world countries to figure that out and to be willing to charge 10% of what everybody else is charging for the market to correct itself. So I don't see that. That's not going to be a happy place to be in a year. I can tell you that for free. It's not going to be good. But you, dude, like I get like 5 people a day telling me they can do short form stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm like, well, how much per video? They're like $100. I'm like,
yeah. It's like there's like 10 other guys waiting to do it for free.
Exactly.
So to all the guys watching it, as much as I love you guys, you heard Charlie.
Well, the reason people want to start those businesses is because they're not very painful.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Like, all I've got to do is edit videos. That's easy. No shit. That's why it's such a bad business model, because everyone has the same fucking idea. So, whereas like learning how to become like a true expert in, you know, luxury watch brand, e-commerce, CRO, there's only a few people in the world that are really good at that. Yeah. So, you know, so that's the point.
100%. And then the last few before we wrap it up. All right. Let me think what a good one is.
Why are you cooking? Let him cook.
I try to keep it. No, don't want to get you cancelled now that you're almost at 20K.
Dude, if you ask me anything you want to ask, and
no, I'm kidding. I don't have any cancelable questions.
I'll answer it in a political way that I cannot be cancelled. Try me.
Yeah, like a politician. I actually don't have any.
That's fair.
What I wanted to ask is specifically on partnerships. So obviously you said becoming partners with Bo was one of the best decisions that you made. And I recently partnered with someone as well. He's probably watching this. Shout out to him. But I wanted to ask, do you have any advice for people who do partner?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, the first thing is like, I'm going to write the second point down, otherwise I'll forget it.
Yeah.
The first thing is who you partner with, and it's pretty straightforward. They need to complement you in terms of personality, in terms of goals, in terms of the main one is values. So like Bo and I we have value affinity, which means that like we see the world in the same way, and we both learn from Sam Ovens. So what that means is we both have adopted that paradigm, which means we both want a simple business. We both want to scale. Neither of us want to go and sit on a beach in Malaga and have a lifestyle business. Like, we're kind of like the same person from a value perspective. The other thing is compatibility in terms of like skill set. So I'm market facing, Bo's customer facing. What that means is I'm making decisions and doing things to get clients. Bo's making decisions and doing things to keep them, right? When we both manage the team, so that sort of comes into play. The second thing and this is really important advice for you as well, for your partnership, is ego. So like Bo, and I'm not saying you have an ego problem, because I don't think you do, but Bo and I have this sort of mutual understanding that we never really discussed, that like all ideas are up for discussion and up to be brutally attacked. So if Bo comes up with an idea, or if I come up with an idea, it's the other person's job to play devil's advocate, even if they agree. Because that way you get to the bottom whether the idea is good or not. So Bo and I know 90% of the ideas that he comes up with and that I come up with are shit, right? And this is a really important lesson. Like, I'm fallible, right? Everyone needs to recognize their own fallibility. So like, I'll come up with a suggestion that I think could help the business, and then Bo will be like, why? And then I'll try and answer it, and then he'll ask why again, and I'll realize it's shit. So it's kind of like, we have this sort of unwritten rule where I'd never attack Bo, but I'd attack his ideas and vice versa. So if he came up with an idea, I'd be like, mate, that is the most stupid thing you've ever said. I'm not attacking him, right? And he can do the same thing to me. But when we're discussing these things, we like, if you propose a idea to your business partner, release all emotional ties to that idea, because then because it needs to become about two people working for the same goal, analyzing an idea that is separated and objective from the individuals. Because if you go in with an agenda and you want this thing to be right, then you're going to be biased towards either convincing him to do something that is wrong. And that's happened before with Bo and I, and we've both suggested ideas that were wrong and we introduced and they were bad. I've introduced ideas that were wrong and that they were bad. But we quickly realized the reason that happened is because the other person didn't do a good enough job of playing devil's advocate. So if I propose a decision, like Bo and I, we have this mutual responsibility for everything in the business. So if I suggest a decision and we make it and we change the business according to it and it doesn't go well, it falls on me, but Bo will also take equal blame because he didn't have the foresight to say, no, that's bad, that's the wrong idea. So it's this sort of like mutual responsibility for everything. But more importantly, when you do propose ideas, that the ego is completely removed. Because if I'm afraid of offending Bo, the partnership falls apart. So, you know, we have like Bo, I would consider Bo to be like my best friend, which is weird because it's a business context. Yeah. Like, ironically, I've still not met him yet, right? But I've talked to him every day for the last like 6 years. But at the same time, I'm able to ruthlessly attack his ideas and vice versa without any ego. So, yeah, that's the big one.
That's some really good points.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I could see from myself as well was coming up with an idea, thinking this is the best thing ever, and then going in with the agenda of, I need to persuade him that this is a great idea, as opposed to, let me give the honest idea and see what he says and get feedback on it.
Ideas with agenda are just mistakes.
Exactly.
Because like the more you want to convince them to do it, the more likely you are to be wrong.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like, but that's one thing that I've learned. And I got very lucky with Bo, you know, as far as partnerships goes, it's once in a lifetime partnership sort of thing. But that's how we manage it.
Shout
and
out
also
to Bo.
like the other thing as well is we run all personal purchases through each other. Right? So I'm not talking about like, Bo, I want to buy a chocolate bar, do you mind? But like anything that we would buy for ourselves through the business, like a train ticket or a hotel or a fucking pen, is run through the other person. And usually it's like, yeah, mate, it's fine. And I don't think I've ever said to Bo, no, don't buy it. But like, it's that sort of mutual thing where like the money we've got on the business account is ours, it's shared. And no matter how small the purchasing decision, we will still run it through each other, because it's just, yeah, I just think that's another thing that is pretty helpful. So
yeah, especially with that AMG.
Yeah, so I was telling Ethan this, like I want to buy a C63S AMG, which is actually a stupid idea, right? And like Bo was like, fuck no. And I was like, and this is the thing, this literally happened this morning. I was trying to convince him. I went in with an agenda, and now in hindsight, I realized that I was like, I was like, I want to buy this C63S AMG. He's like, how much is it? I was like, $50,000. And he was like, well, why do you want to buy it? And I was just like, well, I just feel like it'd be cool to have. And he was like, well, does it do anything good for the brand? And I was like, well, not really. It's just a personal, stupid decision.
Marketing.
And then it started to dawn on me, like, as I was trying to justify it, I was like, oh, this is just such a stupid idea. Because I don't need it. It's like, it would be ego. So it's just, and Bo's done similar things before, not in terms of purchasing decisions, but like similar sort of stuff where I've just been like, no, like, why? And then he's like, oh shit, yeah, that's why.
Fair enough. The last question that I want to ask is, what does the next 10 years look like for Charlie Morgan? What's the grand plan?
Well, hopefully I'm alive, touch wood.
Yeah.
But assuming all goes to plan. So the mission is still to make client acquisition easy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the level of my wealth will inherently associate itself with the level at which I solve that problem, right? Mm-hmm. So it's whether or not I'm doing it for agencies or coaching consultants, or if I'm doing it for international corporations, for example, different kettle of fish. However, our next step is, and I can sort of break down the strategy, not in full, but the next step is to get Easy Grow, our single product, to 8 figures. That's the first objective, and that will probably happen in the next 3 to 6 months because of the trajectory we're on right now. It's 1,000 appointments a month, 20% sales conversion rate with 70% show rate. The best
simple math.
We've already got the best product. We just need to keep making sure that we don't slip and we keep adding things to it. We've already got the show rate and the conversion rate. We just need to add 2 or 3 more reps with the existing system, and the appointments are just going to flow in. I know I can book 1,000 appointments with my eyes closed, so I know we can do it. It's just a question of waiting now. So once you set the variables and you achieve them, then you just wait. And then also making sure that we don't add any other stupid shit to the business we don't need to add. So once that's done, I have got something exciting that I'm not going to share, but we're going to be working on another product. You got to keep some secrets. I'll tell you after. I'll tell you after this. Right. There's something we're going to work on after that milestone has been achieved. We'll also probably introduce a mastermind to the business. With the mastermind, Easy Grow, and the new potential product, we should be able to do 20 million a year in revenue. Probably on, if we're careful with it, 70% profit margins, because that's sort of, we sit at like 75% margins at the moment. Yes. So there's no reason why we can't hold that. Beyond that, I mean, Bo and I intend on moving to Dubai because the efficiency of income is just impossible to, like, So it's hard to sort of stay sane when you could be paying 0% tax, but you're actually paying like all of this tax. And then beyond that, it will be there's some other stuff we're going to work on, but for now, I'm just focused on getting Easy Grow to 8 figures. And then once that's done, next product. But this is the problem that I've got now, and I'll close with this, and this is a very unique problem to have, but now that I've set these variables for my goal, which is best product, 1,000 appointments, 20% sales conversion rate, so show rate, I haven't got anything to do because we've got the product, right? And I can add to that and I can do more on that, but it's not a full-time job. I know how to get the appointments and I can do that, but it's not a full-time job. And the sales reps take care of the rest. So I'm in a very unique position now where the more action I take on the business, the worse the business gets. Wow. Because now I could take 80 hours a week and start adding all sorts of stuff to it. But by doing that, the business will regress. Because there's a point, and it's weird, but and Bo and I have come to terms with this, that the next couple months are about boredom. And now we've got to have the discipline to not work, which is so fucking weird because all I've known is work. But the thing is if I'm working full time on the business, I'm working on things that don't matter, or I'm adding things that don't need to be added. Wow. And so that's what I'm trying to handle at the moment is not having, because I've built Easy Grow, right? I was, locked in this room for 12 hours a day working on the thing. Now suddenly there's nothing to do because the appointments are flowing. We've got the conversion rate and the show rate, and we've got people working on the product. So what do I do? It's I could go and start, adding more stuff. I could start a podcast. I could make another YouTube channel over here. Why don't I start doing TikTok more heavily here? Why don't I start working on another module for the product here? But we don't need any of that stuff to get to 8 figures. And if we do, it will actually inhibit our ability to get there or maintain it because it adds operational drag. So now I have to just sit on my hands and do nothing, which is fucking weird. And I've never been there before. And you'd think it's a luxury. You'd think it's be oh yeah, well, you can just go and travel around Europe or something. But
sounds like torture.
Yeah, you get Stockholm syndrome. Like Bo said, this must be what it's like to sell a business.
Yeah.
I was like, well, shit, yeah. But I mean, most people would luxuriate over the idea of having like, you know, $1 million a month in passive. I'm saying passive is not, but in an income that, you know, you don't have to work for. But the problem with it is that people don't realize this, is they want that financial freedom and they want an automated business. But to build an automated business, you have to become conscientious. And when you've achieved the automation, you will always crave the conscientiousness because of Stockholm syndrome. So once you build it, you can't escape the work because you won't want to. So anyway, that's what I'm working on at the moment. So,
that's crazy. That's so interesting too. But
it's a paradox. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Now
I think we'll end it there. Man, this was such a good one.
Yeah, I could keep going, mate. I could honestly keep going. I love the questions. You've asked some really intelligent stuff. It's really cool.
Well, let's get another one booked in and we can keep going. But I have to hop onto a sales call quick.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I'm looking for shit to do now.
Okay.
No more questions, mate. I've got nothing to do. In all seriousness, I really appreciate you having me, man. Am I allowed to pitch my thing? Do you mind?
Yeah, man. I was about to say, what's the call to action? Where do people find you?
Yeah. So, well, I was going to say pitch my thing as in like where people can find me.
Pitch it.
Yeah. So if you just go on Charlie Morgan, type in YouTube, that wouldn't work. If you go on YouTube and type in Charlie Morgan, I'll pop up. The main thing is just check out the YouTube channel. And if you're not familiar with myself, I'm really glad that you're here, and you know, I hope you can subscribe, and hopefully I can add some more value in the future. And then if you do have some interest in working with us or investing in the systems we have for client acquisition, every YouTube video I post has a funnel in the description. It's a sales funnel. It's designed to sell you something. I'm not going to bullshit you and pretend it's free training, right? But ultimately, if you just check me out on YouTube, that'll be the best place to find me.
Do it, guys. Do it.
Cool.
Does EasyGrow have a website, or do they use the funnel in the YouTube description?
Funnel's the best place to go. I mean, we've got a website, but it just takes you to the funnel. So, So yeah.
Fair enough. Other than that, Charlie, man, it was an absolute pleasure.
What a pleasure.
Thank you again.
You take care, mate. Cheers, everyone.